Marcus Chen sat in his small apartment, staring at the empty beer bottle in his weathered hands. The silence pressed against his ears like a living thing, broken only by the distant hum of city traffic below his third-floor window. 3 months had passed since he'd returned from the Kepler 442b campaign. 3 months since humanity's first interstellar war had ended with an unlikely alliance rather than conquest or defeat. The knock on his door came at exactly 1400 hours, military precision that made his spine straighten automatically. Old habits died hard, especially when they'd kept you alive through 18 months of fighting creatures that shouldn't exist according to every biology textbook ever written. "Marcus Chen?" The voice belonged to a woman, crisp and professional. Through the peephole, he saw a figure in an expensive dark suit, her auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun. Behind her stood 2 others, equally formal, equally serious. Depends who's asking. Marcus kept the chain lock engaged as he opened the door a crack. Trust was another casualty of war, filed away with innocence and the belief that the universe was a predictable place. The woman held up credentials that made Marcus's blood run cold. United Earth Defense Corps, Xenological Affairs Division, the department that handled things too strange for regular military channels, things that made hardened soldiers wake up screaming. "My name is Director Sarah Walsh. We need to discuss your service record with the 7th Expeditionary Force." She paused, studying his face with calculating eyes. "Specifically, your actions during the Battle of Thornspire Canyon." Marcus closed the door, slid off the chain, and opened it wide. Some conversations couldn't be avoided, no matter how much alcohol you poured over the memories. The apartment felt smaller with 3 government officials sitting in his salvaged furniture. Walsh took the armchair he'd recovered from a demolished building, her companions flanking her like guards. Marcus remained standing, falling into parade rest without conscious thought. "You're probably wondering why we're here," Walsh began, pulling a tablet from her briefcase. "The war ended 3 months ago with the Treaty of Mutual Understanding. What you might not know is that King Vorthak specifically requested to honor certain human soldiers for their conduct during the conflict." The name hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Vorthak, the massive alien ruler whose forces had initially seemed unstoppable. Vorthak, whose warriors had torn through 3 human colonies before the 7th Expeditionary Force had been deployed to stop them. Vorthak, who had watched Marcus do something that changed the course of an entire war. "I did my job," Marcus said quietly. "Nothing more." Walsh tilted her head, a gesture that reminded him uncomfortably of the predatory aliens they'd fought. "Your job was to neutralize enemy combatants and secure strategic positions. What you did went considerably beyond those parameters." The tablet screen flickered to life, displaying footage that Marcus had hoped never to see again. Thornspire Canyon, a natural fortress on Kepler 442b, where Vorthak's forces had made their last stand. The recording showed the aftermath of the battle, human and alien soldiers lying broken among the crimson rocks. Then the camera panned to show Marcus, still in his damaged power armor, kneeling beside a wounded alien warrior. The creature in the footage was massive, easily 8 feet tall even lying down, with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed amber in the alien twilight. One of its 4 arms hung at an impossible angle, purple blood seeping through the gaps in its chitinous armor. By all rights, Marcus should have put a plasma round through its skull and moved on to the next target. Instead, the footage showed him applying emergency medical foam to the creature's wounds. "The Korthak warrior's name was Thren Ka," Walsh continued, her voice neutral as a newscaster's. "Third son of King Vorthak, heir to the Iron Throne of the Hegemony. He was leading the final assault when a human grenade took out half his squad and left him bleeding out in a crater." Marcus watched himself in the recording, saw the moment when more alien soldiers appeared at the crater's edge, weapons raised. The human soldiers behind Marcus were already targeting them, fingers on triggers, waiting for his order to open fire. One word from him and the canyon would have erupted in violence again. Instead, Marcus had stood slowly, hands visible and empty, and said something to the aliens in their own language. "Where did you learn Korthak battle speak?" Walsh asked, pausing the video. "POW camp on Arcturus Station," Marcus replied. "Spent 2 months there before the prisoner exchange. You learn fast when it's the difference between getting fed and getting beaten." The truth was more complicated. Marcus had always been good with languages, a skill that had made him valuable as a field intelligence operative. But more than that, he'd recognized something in the wounded alien's eyes that transcended species barriers. Pain, yes, but also fear and a desperate desire to see home again. It was a look he'd seen in the mirror often enough. Walsh nodded and resumed the video. The alien soldiers lowered their weapons as Marcus spoke, their leader responding in the same guttural tongue. What followed was the strangest 40 minutes of Marcus's life, as he'd worked alongside enemy medics to stabilize Threnka while both sides maintained an impromptu ceasefire. "The prince survived because of your intervention," Walsh said as the footage ended. 3 days later, King Vorthak agreed to the peace talks that ended the war. He cited his son's account of human mercy as a key factor in his decision. Marcus said nothing. He'd heard rumors about the peace negotiations, but most soldiers were kept in the dark about political machinations. They were told to fight, then told to stop fighting, and the reasons why rarely mattered to the boots on the ground. "Now comes the interesting part," Walsh continued. "As part of the treaty negotiations, both sides agreed to cultural exchanges. Technology transfers, scientific cooperation, that sort of thing. But King Vorthak made one unusual personal request." She leaned forward, studying Marcus's face. He asked for permission to honor specific human soldiers with traditional Korthak gifts of recognition. The second government official, a thin man with nervous eyes, opened a metal briefcase. Inside, nestled in custom foam padding, lay an ornate collar made from some kind of dark metal. Symbols were etched into its surface, alien script that seemed to writhe and shift when Marcus looked directly at it. "This is a bonding collar," Walsh explained. "In Korthak society, they're used to establish ceremonial partnerships with, well, the closest translation would be companion beasts. Highly intelligent creatures that serve as advisors, guards, and friends to important Korthak nobility." Marcus stared at the collar, unease crawling up his spine. "You're telling me an alien king wants to give me a pet?" "Not exactly." Walsh's smile was thin and entirely without warmth. "The creature isn't a pet. It's more like a diplomatic gift with complications. The Korthak consider the bond sacred, unbreakable until death. Refusing the gift would be interpreted as a grave insult, potentially damaging the peace treaty. And if I accept it, then you become responsible for the creature's well-being. The Korthak will interpret any harm that comes to it as an act of war." Walsh closed the briefcase with a soft click. "No pressure." Marcus laughed, a bitter sound that echoed off his apartment's bare walls. "So I save one alien prince and suddenly I'm responsible for keeping the peace between two species?" "That's the nature of consequence," Walsh replied. "Actions have weight, especially when they change the course of history." The third official, a woman who'd remained silent until now, spoke up. "There's something else you should know. The creature isn't typical. According to Korthak records, it's undergone significant genetic and cybernetic modifications. Enhanced intelligence, extended lifespan, and certain other capabilities that aren't entirely clear from the translated documents." "What kind of capabilities?" "Communication, for one thing. The creature can supposedly speak multiple languages, including English. The Korthak describe it as blessed with the gift of words and wisdom. The woman paused, consulting her tablet. There are also references to something called void sight and pack memory, but the translations are unclear. Marcus felt a headache building behind his eyes. Let me get this straight. An alien king wants to give me a genetically modified, cybernetically enhanced, talking wolf thing as a reward for saving his son's life. And if I refuse or let anything happen to it, we go back to war. That's a crude but accurate summary, Walsh confirmed. When would this gift arrive? It's already here. Walsh checked her watch. The transport should be touching down at Andrews Air Force Base in approximately 2 hours. We'd like you to come with us to receive it. Marcus looked around his small apartment, taking in the sparse furnishings and empty bottles. 3 months of civilian life had felt like swimming through molasses, every day an exercise in finding purpose in a world that no longer needed him to kill things. Maybe a talking alien wolf was exactly the kind of chaos his life required. Do I have a choice? Everyone has choices, Walsh said, standing. But some choices carry greater weight than others. The Korthak delegation is expecting you to be there. King Vorthak specifically requested your presence for the transfer ceremony. Transfer ceremony? The bonding ritual, the nervous man explained. Nothing too dramatic, according to our xenological experts. Some ritual words, placing the collar, that sort of thing. Supposedly, it creates a psychic link between you and the creature. Marcus felt the walls of his apartment closing in. 6 months ago, he'd been a simple soldier following simple orders. Now he was being asked to participate in alien bonding rituals that might create psychic links with genetically modified creatures. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. What happens if the bond doesn't take? If this creature doesn't like me? According to Korthak tradition, the bond is predetermined by fate, Walsh replied. If you were chosen to receive this gift, it means the creature is already spiritually matched to you. She paused. Of course, that's assuming their mythology has any basis in reality. And if their mythology is wrong, then we find out together. The drive to Andrews Air Force Base gave Marcus time to think, which was unfortunate because thinking led to remembering, and remembering led to the kind of thoughts that had driven him to empty beer bottles in the first place. The countryside rolled past the government sedan's windows, autumn colors painting the hills in shades of amber and crimson that reminded him too much of alien sunsets. The airbase was a hive of activity, military personnel moving with the efficient urgency that Marcus remembered from his active duty days. The alien transport sat on the tarmac like a metallic mountain, its organic curves and flowing lines making human aircraft look crude and angular by comparison. Korthak design philosophy favored forms that seemed grown rather than built, technology that resembled living things more than machines. A honor guard of both human and alien soldiers flanked the transport's boarding ramp. The Korthak warriors were impressive even standing still, their obsidian skin gleaming in the afternoon sun, ceremonial weapons held in perfect formation. They wore no armor, displaying the ritual scars and tattoos that marked their rank and achievements. Nervous? Walsh asked as they approached the reception area. Should I be? Probably. King Vorthak emerged from the transport like a force of nature, his massive frame draped in robes that seemed to shift color in the light. He was larger than his soldiers, ancient scars crisscrossing his skin in patterns that told the story of 1,000 battles. 4 amber eyes focused on Marcus with an intensity that made the human feel like a specimen under a microscope. Behind the king came his retinue, advisors and guards moving in perfect synchronization. And behind them, led by a slender Korthak female, came the creature that would change Marcus's life forever. The first thing that struck him was its size. The alien wolf was massive, easily the size of a small horse, with midnight black fur that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its build was clearly lupine, but enhanced and refined beyond anything Earth's evolution had produced. Muscles moved beneath its coat with predatory grace, and its paws were large enough to leave dinner plate-sized tracks. The second thing he noticed were its eyes. They glowed with an inner fire, shifting between amber and silver as they tracked movement around the landing area. But there was more than animal intelligence there. The gaze that met Marcus's was ancient, knowing, and unmistakably aware. The creature's mouth was muzzled with what looked like a ceremonial restraint, ornate metalwork that allowed it to breathe and see but prevented it from speaking. Its ears were pierced with small technological devices that Marcus assumed were translators or communication enhancers. "Marcus Chen of the Human Defense Corps," King Vorthak's voice boomed across the tarmac, his words translated by hidden speakers. "You honor us with your presence." Marcus stepped forward, acutely aware that dozens of cameras were recording this moment for posterity. "Your Majesty, the honor is mine." The alien king studied him for a long moment, then gestured to the wolf. "This is Fenris Ka, last of the Void Walkers, companion to my bloodline for 7 generations. She carries within her the memories of those who came before, wisdom gathered across centuries of service to the Iron Throne." The creature's eyes never left Marcus's face as Vorthak spoke. There was something unsettling about that gaze, as if she was seeing more than just his physical appearance. Marcus had the distinct impression he was being evaluated, measured against some standard he couldn't comprehend. "In recognition of your mercy toward my son and your honor in battle, I offer you this sacred trust," Vorthak continued. "Fenris Ka will serve as your companion, advisor, and guardian for as long as you both draw breath. Do you accept this responsibility?" The moment stretched like a held breath. Marcus could feel the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders, the knowledge that his next words would echo across 2 worlds. Behind him, he sensed Director Walsh's tension, her understanding that the wrong choice could unravel everything their species had worked to achieve. But as he looked into Fenris Ka's ancient eyes, Marcus realized the choice had already been made, not by politics or diplomacy, but by something deeper. Recognition, perhaps. 2 souls shaped by conflict, veterans of different wars, but united by the understanding that survival sometimes required mercy. "I accept," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly across the silent tarmac. King Vorthak nodded slowly, then gestured to the female Korthak who held Fenris Ka's lead. She approached with reverent care, removing the ceremonial muzzle with practiced movements. The wolf flexed her jaw, working out the stiffness, then fixed Marcus with a stare that seemed to see straight through him. When she spoke, her voice was like distant thunder, deep and resonant, with an accent that suggested multiple languages learned and mastered. "So," Fenris Ka said, her words causing several human soldiers to step back in surprise, "you're the one who saved the young prince. I wondered what manner of human could inspire such generosity from a king known for his ruthlessness." Marcus blinked, momentarily speechless. Hearing the creature speak was one thing. Hearing her speak with obvious intelligence and subtle humor was something else entirely. "I'm starting to wonder that myself," he managed. Fenris Ka's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, revealing teeth that could have torn through steel plating. "Good. Certainty is the enemy of wisdom, and I have little patience for fools." The bonding ceremony was surprisingly simple. King Vorthak placed the ornate collar around Fenris Ka's neck while speaking ritual words in ancient Korthak, their meaning lost to translation, but their power evident in the way both species listened with reverent attention. Marcus felt something shift as the collar settled into place, a sensation like a door opening in the back of his mind. Then Fenris Ka turned to face him, lowered her massive head, and spoke words that would bind them together across whatever adventures lay ahead. I am Fenris Ka, walker of the void, keeper of memory, guardian of secrets. I choose you, Marcus Chen, as my bonded companion. Your enemies are my enemies, your friends my pack, your fate intertwined with mine until the last star burns cold. As the wolf's words echoed across the tarmac, Marcus felt the bond settle into place, like a missing piece of his soul clicking into position. For the first time since returning from Kepler 442b, he felt complete. The ceremony concluded with traditional Korthak blessing rituals and formal photographs that would appear in history books for centuries to come. As the alien delegation prepared to depart, King Vorthak approached Marcus one final time. "Treat her well, human warrior," the king said quietly. "She is precious beyond measure, a living link to the deepest mysteries of our people. In bonding with her, you become part of something greater than either of our species alone." "I'll do my best," Marcus replied. "Your best was sufficient to save my son when wisdom would have counseled leaving him to die," Vorthak observed. "I trust it will be sufficient for this task as well." As the alien transport lifted off into the darkening sky, Marcus found himself standing alone on the tarmac with a creature that belonged in mythology rather than reality. Fenris Ka sat on her haunches, watching the ship disappear into the clouds with eyes that held depths he couldn't fathom. "So," Marcus said eventually, "what now?" The wolf turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. "Now, Marcus Chen, we go home, and tomorrow we begin to discover what it truly means to be bonded across the stars." As they walked toward the waiting government vehicle, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his real adventure was just beginning. The war was over, but the story of a human veteran and his alien wolf companion was only starting to unfold. Whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. Fenris Ka padded beside him, her massive presence both comforting and intimidating. In the span of a few hours, his quiet civilian life had exploded into something vast and incomprehensible. But for the first time in months, Marcus felt truly alive. The bond hummed between them, alien and familiar at once, promising changes he couldn't yet imagine. The apartment that had felt cramped with 3 government officials now seemed impossibly small, with Fenris Ka taking up residence. Marcus watched the massive wolf examine every corner of his living space, her enhanced senses cataloging details he couldn't imagine. She moved with fluid grace despite her size, paused silent on the worn carpet as she investigated this strange new environment. "Your dwelling is modest," Fenris Ka observed, her voice carrying undertones that suggested this was an understatement of galactic proportions. "It suits my needs," Marcus replied, suddenly self-conscious about the empty bottles he'd hastily hidden before leaving for Andrews. "I wasn't exactly expecting houseguests." The wolf paused her exploration to fix him with those unsettling amber eyes. "Houseguest implies temporary residence. I am your bonded companion. This is now my home as well as yours." The weight of that statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. In all the ceremony and political maneuvering, he hadn't truly considered the practical implications. A creature the size of a small horse would be living in his 1-bedroom apartment indefinitely. The neighbors were going to love this. "About that," Marcus said carefully, "the building has a no-pets policy." Fenris Ka's ears flattened against her skull, and Marcus felt a spike of something that might have been indignation flow through their bond. "Pet?" Her voice dropped to a rumble that vibrated through the floor. "I am a void walker, keeper of ancient memories, advisor to kings. I am not some domestic animal to be caged and fed scraps." I didn't mean it like that, Marcus said quickly, realizing his mistake. I just meant the landlord might have issues with— Then perhaps we should discuss the matter with this landlord, Fenris Ka interrupted. I find that most misunderstandings can be resolved through proper communication. Before Marcus could respond, she padded to the apartment door and sat back on her haunches, somehow managing to look both regal and patient. It was clear she expected him to facilitate this conversation immediately. Marcus sighed and reached for his phone. This was going to be interesting. Mr. Kowalski, the building's elderly superintendent, arrived 20 minutes later with a tool belt, a scowl, and absolutely no preparation for what he was about to encounter. Marcus opened the door to reveal the man's weathered face, cycling through confusion, shock, and finally settling on resigned bewilderment. "Chen," Kowalski said slowly, his eyes fixed on Fenris Ka. "What in God's name is that thing?" "This is Fenris Ka," Marcus began, but the wolf interrupted him with a polite clearing of her throat. "I prefer to speak for myself," she said, her voice pitched to carry the same authoritative tone she'd used with King Vorthak's court. "I am Fenris Ka of the Void Walkers, recently bonded to Marcus Chen as part of the Treaty of Mutual Understanding between our species." Kowalski's mouth opened and closed several times without producing sound. He looked from the talking wolf to Marcus and back again, his expression suggesting he was seriously considering retirement. "You know what?" the superintendent said finally. "After 40 years maintaining this building, I've seen everything from midnight accordion lessons to attempted meth labs. A talking space dog is just another Tuesday." He pulled a form from his tool belt. "I'll need you to fill out a pet registration form and pay the deposit." "I am not a pet," Fenris Ka said firmly. "Lady, you've got 4 legs and fur. In the eyes of the housing authority, you're a pet. A really big, really weird pet, but a pet nonetheless." Kowalski shrugged. "But between you and me, as long as you don't chew the furniture or leave messes in the hallway, we'll call you whatever you want." Marcus watched in fascination as Fenris Ka considered this compromise. Her head tilted slightly, ears swiveling as she processed the superintendent's words. Through their bond, he could feel her weighing dignity against practicality. "Very well," she said eventually, "but I require it noted in your records that I am a diplomatic companion, not a common animal." "Sure thing, Your Highness." "I'll make a note." As Kowalski left with the completed paperwork and a security deposit that made Marcus wince, Fenris Ka settled onto the living room carpet with a sound somewhere between a sigh and a growl. "Human bureaucracy is unnecessarily complex," she observed. "Tell me about it," Marcus agreed. "Want some coffee? I need to figure out what you eat." "Coffee would be acceptable. As for sustenance, my dietary requirements are somewhat specialized." She paused, and Marcus caught a hint of what might have been embarrassment through their bond. "The modifications to my physiology require specific nutrients not commonly found in Earth-based foods." "What kind of nutrients?" "Crystallized void essence, primarily. Certain rare minerals. The occasional quantum-charged protein matrix." Fenris Ka's ears drooped slightly. "Items that may prove difficult to acquire on this world." Marcus stared at her. "You're telling me you eat space crystals?" "Among other things, yes. How long can you go without void essence?" "Perhaps a month before the deficiency begins to affect my abilities. 2 months before serious degradation occurs." Fenris Ka's voice remained calm, but Marcus could sense underlying worry. "I had hoped the diplomatic corps would have made arrangements for supply shipments." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the apartment's poor heating. If Fenris K. died of malnutrition while under his care, it could be interpreted as an act of war. The peace treaty hung in the balance, and he was already facing his first crisis as an interspecies guardian. "We'll figure something out," he said with more confidence than he felt. "Let me make some calls." The next morning brought a knock at the door that carried the distinctive rhythm of official business. Marcus opened it to find Director Walsh standing in the hallway, her expression unreadable behind dark sunglasses. "Good morning, Marcus. Mind if I come in?" "Do I have a choice?" "Not really." Fenris Ka rose from where she'd been lying near the window, her massive form suddenly filling half the living room. Walsh paused in the doorway, clearly recalculating her approach in the face of the wolf's intimidating presence. "Director Walsh," Fenris Ka said politely. "How pleasant to see you again." Fenris Ka, "I trust you're settling in well?" "As well as can be expected, given certain logistical challenges." Walsh's eyes narrowed slightly. "What kind of challenges?" Marcus decided to be direct. "She needs specialized food that apparently doesn't exist on Earth. Crystallized void essence and quantum proteins. Without them, she'll start weakening within a month." "I see." Walsh pulled out her tablet, fingers dancing across the screen. "That explains the emergency requisition request we received from the Korthak Embassy this morning. They're requesting permission to establish a supply depot at the Xerion Corporation facility in Nevada." "Xerion?" Marcus asked. "The defense contractor?" "They've been reverse engineering Korthak technology since the peace treaty was signed. Apparently, they've learned how to synthesize some of the basic dietary supplements your companion requires." Walsh paused, studying Fenris Ka with calculating eyes. "However, there's a complication." "There always is," Marcus muttered. "Xerion's board of directors is concerned about the arrangement. They view Fenris Ka as a potential security risk. There have been suggestions that she should be housed at their facility for observation and study." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Fenris Ka's lips pulled back from her teeth, and Marcus felt a wave of cold fury flow through their bond. "I am not a laboratory specimen to be caged and studied," the wolf said, her voice carrying undertones that made the windows rattle. "Of course not," Walsh replied smoothly. "However, Xerion controls the supply chain. If they're uncomfortable with the current arrangement, they might find reasons to delay shipments." Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place. They want to use her as leverage. Study an alien companion creature in exchange for keeping her alive. I wouldn't put it quite so bluntly, but yes, corporate interests rarely align with diplomatic niceties. Walsh closed her tablet. "There is another option." "I'm listening." "Fenris Ka could demonstrate her value as a strategic asset rather than just a diplomatic symbol. Prove that she's worth more as an active partner than as a research subject." "What did you have in mind?" Walsh's smile was sharp as broken glass. "We have a situation that requires unconventional solutions. A missing person case with potential national security implications. Someone with Fenris Ka's unique abilities might be exactly what we need." Marcus looked at his companion, seeing his own suspicion reflected in her amber eyes. "What kind of abilities are we talking about?" "You mentioned void sight and pack memory yesterday," Walsh said to Fenris Ka. "Care to elaborate on what those terms mean?" The wolf was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of ancient knowledge. "Void sight allows me to perceive things that exist between dimensions, entities, and energies that normal senses cannot detect. Pack memory grants me access to the accumulated experiences of previous void walkers, knowledge passed down through 7 generations of my line." "And you can track things? People?" "I can follow trails that exist beyond the physical realm. Emotional resonance, psychic imprints, the quantum signature that every living being leaves in their wake." Fenris Ka's ears pricked forward. "Why do you ask?" Walsh pulled a photograph from her briefcase, setting it on the coffee table. The image showed a young woman, perhaps 25, with dark hair and serious eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, theoretical physicist working on classified projects at the Princeton Advanced Research Institute. She disappeared 3 days ago from her secured laboratory. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of struggle, and no trace on any surveillance systems. Marcus picked up the photograph, studying the woman's face. She looked brilliant, driven, and slightly haunted. The kind of person who stayed up too late working on problems that could change the world. What was she working on? He asked. Dimensional fold technology. Theoretical frameworks for faster-than-light travel using quantum tunnel effects. Walsh paused. Based on principles derived from captured Korthak vessels. Fenris Ka's head snapped up, her entire body suddenly tense. Dimensional fold technology? That is forbidden knowledge, even among my people. Only the most senior Void Walkers are permitted to understand such concepts. Which is why we think Dr. Rodriguez might have accidentally accessed something she wasn't prepared to handle, Walsh explained. The last entry in her research log mentioned detecting anomalous energy signatures and impossible spatial geometries in her laboratory. You think she opened a portal to somewhere else? Marcus said. We think she might have torn a hole in reality and fallen through it. Or worse, something might have come through from the other side. Walsh's expression was grim. Either way, we need to find her before the situation escalates. Marcus looked at Fenris Kai, feeling the bond between them pulse with shared understanding. This was their chance to prove their worth, to show that their partnership could be more than just a diplomatic nicety. What do you need us to do? He asked. Visit the laboratory, see if Fenris Ka can pick up any traces that our conventional investigators missed. Find out what happened to Dr. Rodriguez and whether the dimensional fold technology poses a threat to national security. Fenris Ka stood, her massive frame radiating determination. I will need time to prepare. Void Sight requires specific mental configurations, and I have not used pack memory since bonding with Marcus. The process can be intense. How intense? Marcus asked. Imagine experiencing the memories of 7 lifetimes simultaneously while your consciousness exists partially outside normal space-time. Fenris Ka's expression was serious. The previous knowledge can be overwhelming for both participants in a bonding pair. Both participants. The bond flows both ways, Marcus Chen. When I access pack memory, you will experience fragments of what I experience. Ancient hunts across stars you have never seen, conversations with kings whose names are lost to time, battles fought in dimensions that exist only in theory. Marcus felt a chill of anticipation mixed with terror. He'd signed up to care for an alien wolf, not to have his consciousness scattered across multiple realities. Is it dangerous? All knowledge carries risk. But without pack memory, I cannot properly interpret what Void Sight reveals. The two abilities are interconnected, aspects of the same cosmic awareness that defines a Void Walker. Walsh watched their exchange with obvious interest. How long would you need to prepare? The rest of today. The process should begin at sunset when the barriers between dimensions are thinnest. Fenris Ka turned to Marcus. You should rest. What we will attempt tonight will test the limits of our bond. After Walsh left with promises to arrange access to the Princeton facility, Marcus tried to follow Fenris Ka's advice about resting. Instead, he found himself pacing the apartment, while his companion lay motionless near the window, her breathing deep and rhythmic as she prepared for whatever mystical process awaited them. As afternoon faded to evening, Fenris Ka began to change. Her fur seemed to absorb light more completely, creating patches of absolute darkness across her massive frame. Her eyes shifted from amber to silver, then to colors that had no names in any human language. Most unsettling of all, Marcus could feel her presence in his mind growing stronger, their bond deepening beyond anything he'd experienced since the collar ceremony. It begins, she said, as the first stars appeared outside his window. Are you ready to walk between worlds, Marcus Chen? Marcus settled onto the carpet beside her, placing one hand on her shoulder and feeling the unnatural cold that radiated from her modified physiology. As ready as I'll ever be. Then close your eyes and hold fast to your sense of self. We journey now into memory and void, where the past and present converge in ways that can drive the unprepared to madness. As Fenris Ka's consciousness expanded beyond the confines of normal reality, Marcus felt himself pulled along through the bond they shared. The apartment dissolved around them, replaced by visions of impossible scope and beauty. He saw alien worlds beneath unfamiliar stars, witnessed the birth and death of entire civilizations, experienced the accumulated wisdom of creatures that had spent centuries walking between dimensions. Through it all, Fenris Ka guided him, her presence an anchor in the storm of cosmic memory. He saw her predecessors, each void walker unique but connected to the same eternal purpose, to serve as guardians of secrets too dangerous for ordinary minds to comprehend. And in the deepest memories, the most ancient knowledge, Marcus glimpsed something that made his blood run cold. The dimensional fold technology that Dr. Rodriguez had been studying wasn't just theoretical physics. It was the same principle that had allowed the Void Walkers to exist, the fundamental force that connected all realities across space and time. If the missing scientist had accidentally accessed that power, she hadn't just disappeared. She'd become something else entirely, something that might threaten the fabric of existence itself. As dawn broke over the city, Marcus and Fenris Ka returned to ordinary consciousness. Both of them changed by what they'd experienced. The wolf's eyes now held flecks of starlight, and Marcus could feel new knowledge burning in his mind, like half-remembered dreams. "We understand now," Fenris Ka said quietly. "Dr. Rodriguez didn't fall through a portal. She became one." Marcus nodded, the implications settling over him like a heavy blanket. Their first mission as a bonded pair wouldn't just be a search and rescue operation. It would be an attempt to save reality itself from a brilliant scientist who had accidentally transformed herself into a living gateway between worlds. The real test of their partnership was about to begin, and failure might mean the end of both human and Korthak civilization. Marcus looked at his alien companion, seeing his own determination reflected in her otherworldly eyes. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The bond between them hummed with new strength, tempered by shared experience and strengthened by mutual trust. They were no longer just a human veteran and an alien wolf thrown together by politics. They were truly partners now, ready to stand against forces that could tear apart the universe itself. Outside his apartment window, the city woke to another ordinary day, its inhabitants unaware that their reality hung in the balance. But in the small living room where an impossible friendship had taken root, two warriors prepared for a battle that would determine the fate of multiple worlds. The Void was calling, and they would answer as one. The Princeton Advanced Research Institute looked like every other academic building Marcus had ever seen. All brick facades and carefully maintained lawns that screamed institutional respectability. What set it apart were the subtle signs of high-security measures, discreet guard posts, electromagnetic field generators disguised as decorative sculptures, and windows that reflected light in patterns that suggested advanced monitoring systems. Director Walsh met them at the main entrance, accompanied by a nervous-looking man in a lab coat who kept glancing at Fenris Ka with obvious unease. "Dr. James Morrison," Walsh said by way of introduction. He was Dr. Rodriguez's research partner and the last person to see her before the disappearance. Morrison stepped forward hesitantly, his attention divided between Marcus and the massive wolf beside him. "I have to say, when they told me we'd be getting help from an alien consultant, I expected someone more humanoid." "Expectations are the enemy of understanding," Fenris Ka observed mildly. "Show us the laboratory where your colleague vanished." I will need to examine the residual energy patterns. The elevator ride to the underground research levels was cramped and silent, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Morrison fidgeted with his badge while Walsh maintained her professional composure. But Marcus could sense the underlying anxiety radiating from both humans. Through their bond, he felt Fenris Ka's growing unease as they descended. Something was wrong in this place, something that violated the natural order in ways that made even a Voidwalker nervous. The laboratory is behind 3 levels of security containment, Morrison explained as they exited onto Sublevel 3. Biometric scanners, quantum encryption locks, and electromagnetic isolation fields. Nothing gets in or out without authorization from the highest levels of government. Yet Dr. Rodriguez disappeared, Marcus pointed out. That's what makes this so impossible. The security logs show her entering the lab at 1400 hours 3 days ago. She never left, but when security checked on her at 1800, the room was empty. They passed through multiple security checkpoints, each one more sophisticated than the last. Fenris Ka submitted to the various scanners with patient dignity, though Marcus noticed her fur standing slightly on end as they approached the final door. Whatever lay beyond was setting off every instinct she possessed. The laboratory itself was a study in organized chaos. Banks of quantum computers lined the walls, their cooling systems humming with quiet efficiency. In the center of the room stood a complex array of crystalline matrices and field generators that hurt to look at directly. The air itself seemed to shimmer around the device, reality bending in subtle ways that made Marcus's depth perception unreliable. "Impressive," Fenris Ka murmured, her voice carrying undertones of deep concern. "Your Dr. Rodriguez built a dimensional resonance chamber. She was attempting to map the quantum structure of space-time itself." Morrison nodded eagerly. "Elena theorized that by analyzing Korthak technology, we could understand the principles behind faster-than-light travel. The dimensional fold drive systems your people use seem to operate on principles that human physics couldn't explain. Because they operate on principles that require void sight to comprehend," Fenris Ka replied. "Your colleague was attempting to perceive the impossible without proper preparation." Marcus watched as the wolf began to circle the laboratory, her enhanced senses cataloging details no human instrument could detect. Her eyes had shifted to that otherworldly silver again, and he felt the bond between them stretching as her consciousness expanded beyond normal parameters. "The resonance chamber was active when she vanished," Morrison continued. "Power readings showed massive energy spikes, then nothing. Complete silence." "Not silence," Fenris Ka corrected, pausing beside the central device. "Displacement. Dr. Rodriguez didn't disappear from this reality. She became part of the dimensional matrix itself." Director Walsh stepped forward. "What does that mean, exactly?" "It means she's alive, but not in any way we would recognize. Her consciousness has been scattered across multiple dimensional layers, experiencing every possible version of reality simultaneously." Fenris Ka's expression was grim. "Without intervention, she will either go completely insane or become something that threatens the stability of local space-time." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the laboratory's climate control. "Can we get her back?" "Perhaps. But it will require entering the dimensional matrix ourselves, locating her scattered consciousness, and guiding her back to this reality." Fenris Ka turned to face him directly. "The process will be extremely dangerous. One mistake could trap us all in the space between worlds." "What do you need?" Walsh asked. "Access to the resonance chamber controls. And Marcus will need to maintain physical contact with me while I extend my void sight into the dimensional layers. Our bond should provide an anchor to this reality." Morrison looked shocked. "You're talking about deliberately activating the same device that trapped Elena. The energy requirements alone could overload the entire facility. Then we must work quickly, Fenris Ka replied. Each moment Dr. Rodriguez remains displaced increases the risk of permanent dimensional instability. As Morrison reluctantly began powering up the resonance chamber, Marcus found himself studying the complex readouts and wondering how his life had led to this moment. 6 months ago, his biggest concern had been running out of beer. Now he was preparing to risk his sanity rescuing a scientist from a pocket dimension while bonded to an alien wolf who could perceive realities beyond human comprehension. Second thoughts, Fenris Ka asked quietly, moving to stand beside him. Every few minutes, Marcus admitted, but I've learned to ignore them. Good. Doubt can be fatal when dealing with dimensional matrices. Her voice carried a warmth that was becoming familiar. Are you ready? Marcus placed his hand on her shoulder, feeling the unnatural cold that radiated from her modified physiology. Let's bring her home. The resonance chamber activated with a sound like reality tearing. The air in the laboratory began to ripple and fold, geometric patterns emerging that human eyes weren't designed to process. Marcus felt his vision blurring as space itself became fluid, the laws of physics bending around the exotic energies contained within the crystalline matrices. Fenris Ka's consciousness expanded into the dimensional void, and Marcus felt himself pulled along through their bond. This time, however, the experience was different. Instead of accessing ancient memories, they were diving into the chaotic space between realities, where logic and causality became negotiable concepts. The first layer of the dimensional matrix was disorienting but navigable. Marcus found himself standing in a version of the laboratory where everything was subtly wrong. The walls curved impossibly, gravity pointed in multiple directions, and Dr. Rodriguez sat at a workstation that existed in 17 different states simultaneously. Elena, Marcus called out, his voice echoing strangely in the distorted space. The woman turned toward them, but her movements were jerky and unnatural, as if she was fighting against multiple versions of herself trying to act in different ways. When she spoke, her voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Who's asking? I'm busy trying to solve the quantum consciousness paradox. The mathematics don't work unless you account for observer effect across dimensional boundaries. Dr. Rodriguez, you're trapped in a dimensional matrix, Fenris Ka said, her presence stabilizing the immediate area around them. We've come to bring you back to normal reality. Elena laughed, but it was the sound of breaking glass. Normal reality? Do you have any idea what I've seen? The infinite variations, the quantum foam that underlies existence itself. I can perceive every possible outcome, every choice that leads to every possible future. Marcus stepped closer, noting that Elena's form was flickering between different ages and appearances. It's driving you insane, isn't it? Insane? Or enlightened beyond the limitations of linear existence? She gestured to the impossible laboratory around them. I've transcended the need for a single timeline. I can exist in all possibilities simultaneously. Through their bond, Marcus felt Fenris Ka's growing concern. They were losing Elena to the seductive madness of infinite perspective. If she chose to remain in the dimensional matrix, she could become a living breach in reality that would eventually consume everything around it. Look at what you've become, Marcus said firmly. You're fragmenting, losing coherence. The Elena Rodriguez who wanted to push the boundaries of science, who dedicated her life to expanding human knowledge, that person is being torn apart by forces she wasn't meant to experience. Human limitations, Elena replied dismissively. I've moved beyond such constraints. No, Fenris Ka interrupted, her voice carrying the authority of ancient wisdom. You've become lost in possibility without purpose. True transcendence requires maintaining your core self while expanding your awareness. What you've achieved is dissolution, not enlightenment. Elena's form stabilized slightly, confusion replacing the manic confidence. What do you mean? I am a void walker, trained from birth to perceive multiple dimensions without losing myself in them, Fenris Ka explained. The key is not to experience everything, but to understand what is worth experiencing. Knowledge without wisdom leads to madness. Marcus felt understanding flash through their bond. You wanted to understand how Korthak technology works, right? To help humanity reach the stars? Yes, Elena said, her voice becoming more focused. FTL travel, dimensional manipulation, the secrets of advanced civilization. Then let us show you the right way to access that knowledge, Fenris Ka offered. Return to your singular existence, and I will share what my people have learned about safe interaction with dimensional forces. Elena hesitated, her form flickering between stability and chaos. You would share such knowledge? Freely? The treaty between our peoples includes provisions for technological exchange, Marcus said, but it has to be done safely, with proper safeguards and training. I can see so much from here, Elena whispered. All the possible futures, all the ways things could go wrong or right. And that knowledge is poisoning you, Fenris Ka said gently. No mind, human or Korthak, can process infinite possibility without losing track of what makes existence meaningful. Return to us, and we will help you find a path that doesn't lead to madness. The dimensional matrix around them began to shift, reality layers sliding past each other like shuffled cards. Marcus felt the laboratory's anchor point starting to waver and realized they were running out of time. Choose now, Dr. Rodriguez, he said urgently. Come back with us or be lost forever in the space between worlds. Elena looked at them with eyes that held the weight of infinite knowledge and infinite sorrow. If I return, will you help me find a way to use what I've learned? To benefit humanity without destroying myself? I give you my word, Marcus said, meaning it completely. And I pledge the wisdom of the Void Walkers to guide your research, Fenris Ka added. Elena nodded slowly, her form beginning to solidify around a single timeline. Then I choose to remain who I am, rather than become everything at once. The return to normal reality was like being shot from a cannon in reverse. Marcus felt himself pulled through layer after layer of dimensional space, each transition leaving him more disoriented and nauseous. Beside him, Fenris Ka maintained her grip on both Elena's consciousness and their anchor to the laboratory, guiding all three of them back through the quantum maze. They materialized on the laboratory floor in a tangle of limbs and displaced air. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was unconscious but breathing, her form solid and stable once again. Morrison rushed to check her vital signs, while Director Walsh coordinated with the medical team that had been standing by. She's alive, Morrison announced with obvious relief. Unconscious, probably exhausted, but definitely alive and normal. Marcus helped Fenris Ka to her feet, noting that the wolf's eyes had returned to their usual amber glow. How do you feel? Tired, she admitted. Navigating dimensional matrices is taxing even for a void walker, but satisfied. We accomplished what we set out to do. More than that, Walsh said, approaching with her tablet in hand. The energy readings from the rescue operation have provided Zerion Corporation with enough data to synthesize the dietary supplements you need. They've agreed to establish a permanent supply arrangement in exchange for ongoing consultation on dimensional physics research. Marcus felt relief wash through him. So Fenris Ka won't have to worry about starving? Not unless she develops a taste for fast food, Walsh replied with something approaching a smile. The board was particularly impressed by the fact that you risked your lives to save one of their research partners. Corporate executives appreciate loyalty, especially when it protects their investments. Over the following weeks, as Dr. Rodriguez recovered and began working with Korthak advisors on safer approaches to dimensional research, Marcus found himself settling into a routine he never could have imagined. His apartment, once a silent refuge from unwanted memories, had become a hub of interspecies cooperation. Fenris Ka proved to be an excellent roommate, if somewhat demanding when it came to temperature control and her preference for sleeping near windows where she could watch the stars. The wolf's presence had changed more than just his living arrangements. The nightmares that had plagued him since returning from Kepler 442b had largely faded, replaced by dreams that felt more like shared memories. Through their bond, Fenris Ka had given him access to a broader perspective on war, peace, and the complex relationships between different species trying to coexist in an infinite universe. "You're thinking loudly again," Fenris Ka observed one evening as they sat together on the apartment's small balcony. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling like terrestrial stars. "Just wondering how we got here," Marcus replied. "6 months ago, I was a soldier with nothing to do but drink and remember. Now I'm part of some kind of interspecies diplomatic team." "You were always meant for this path," Fenris Ka said with quiet certainty. "King Vorthak chose you not because you saved his son, but because you demonstrated the qualities that make your species remarkable. Which are? Compassion in the face of fear, the ability to choose mercy when violence would be easier, the willingness to sacrifice your own interests for the welfare of others." Fenris Ka's voice carried the weight of ancient knowledge. "These traits are rarer than you might think, even among the most advanced civilizations." Marcus considered this, watching the steady flow of traffic in the streets below. "What happens next?" "Tomorrow we begin training with the new dimensional physics research team. Next month we travel to the Korthak homeworld as cultural ambassadors. Beyond that, the future remains unwritten." Fenris Ka's ears pricked forward as a police siren wailed in the distance. "Does the uncertainty concern you?" "Actually, no," Marcus realized with some surprise. "For the first time in my life, I'm looking forward to whatever comes next." "Good. Anticipation is healthier than regret." They sat in comfortable silence as night settled over the city. In the distance, Marcus could see the running lights of aircraft following their prescribed routes across the sky. Some of those flights, he knew, now carried passengers traveling between Earth and other worlds, part of the growing exchange programs that had emerged from the peace treaty. His phone buzzed with a text message from Director Walsh. Another case, another situation that required their unique combination of skills. Marcus showed the screen to Fenris Ka, who read the brief summary with interest. "Missing terraforming equipment on the Mars colony," she observed. "Possible dimensional displacement event. They want us to investigate." "Mars," Marcus said thoughtfully. "I've never been to Mars." "Then we will experience it together, another first to add to our growing collection." As they prepared to go inside and pack for their next adventure, Marcus found himself reflecting on the path that had led him here. He'd started as a broken soldier trying to drink away his memories, convinced that his best days were behind him. Now he was part of something larger, something that connected two species in ways that neither had imagined possible. "Fenris Ka," he said as they reached the apartment door. "Yes?" "Thank you for choosing me as your bonded companion, for giving me a purpose again." The wolf paused, her amber eyes reflecting the city lights. "The bonding was predetermined by forces greater than either of us. But the friendship we've built, the trust we share, those things we chose ourselves." She placed one massive paw on his shoulder. "The honor is mine, Marcus Chen. You have shown me that courage and compassion are not limited to any single species." As they entered the apartment together, Marcus felt the bond between them pulse with shared contentment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new worlds to explore, new problems to solve. But whatever came next, they would face it as partners, as friends, as living proof that understanding could bridge the gaps between any two species willing to reach across the void. The apartment that had once been a tomb for discarded memories had become the foundation for a future neither of them could have imagined. In saving Dr. Rodriguez from the dimensional matrix, they had also saved themselves from the isolation that had threatened to consume them both. Outside, the city hummed with 8 million lives pursuing their own destinies. Above, the stars beckoned with promises of infinite possibility. And in a small apartment where an unlikely friendship had taken root, a human veteran and an alien wolf planned their next journey into the unknown, secure in the knowledge that some bonds transcend the boundaries of species, space, and time. The void was vast and full of dangers, but they would walk through it together, guardians of a peace that had grown from a single act of mercy on a distant battlefield. The war was over, but their real adventure had just begun. The chatty wolf had found her pack, and the broken soldier had found his purpose. In the infinite tapestry of space and time, their story was just one thread among countless billions. But it was their thread, woven with courage, strengthened by trust, and colored by the hope that all beings, no matter how different, could learn to understand each other if they were willing to try. Marcus Chen, veteran of the Kepler 442b campaign, had received a gift from an alien king. But what he'd truly gained was something far more valuable. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, mercy could light the way to unexpected redemption.